We're ending today with Neil Gorsuch telling lower courts and Brett Kavanaugh telling lower courts, hey, back off, buddy. This is good. I've got 5 Supreme Court articles we're going to go through. Boom, 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 boom. Welcome to Doug in Exile. This is where the happy patriots are. To my quad club, you've watched all 4 episodes today, all the way through. Leave a word in the chat. Let us know you're there. I love hearing from you guys. But let's check in on the Supreme Court. Okay, here we're going to start with CNN. And CNN, this is hostile territory for Trump. Gorsuch and Kavanaugh warn lower court judges in Trump cases. Now, remember, Mike Davis, who we quote a lot, he used to clerk for Gorsuch. It's part of why I find his words so comforting. I think he's really good. And my neighbor across the street, one of my good buddies, he is close friends with Neil Gorsuch, had dinner with him at his house. So I have a lot of respect for Gorsuch in spite of disagreeing with some of his opinions. Here's Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. Let me make myself small just so you can get a look at Kavanaugh there. We'll ignore what looks like Elizabeth Warren down there. Oof. In Donald Trump's long-running feud with federal judges, the president has found some support in an unlikely place, the nation's highest court. Why is that an unlikely place? Trump's constitutional. It's allowed. A growing sense of frustration with some lower courts articulated in terms that at times sound similar to Trump's own rhetoric. He's spreading to the Supreme Court, has crept into a series of opinions this summer from the Supreme Court's conservative justices as they, conservative meaning right thinking, correct thinking, as they struggle a flood of emergency cases dealing with Trump's second term. Remember, this is CNN. They'll never call the other 3, the 3 ladies, the 3 witches, they'll never call them the liberal Supreme Court justices. They'll just call them Supreme Court justices. You're only called a conservative one when they talk about the right. Quote, lower court judges may sometimes disagree with the court's decisions, but they're never free to defy them. That's a shot across the bow from Neil Gorsuch. Justice Gorsuch admonished in an opinion last week tied to the court's decision to allow Trump to cancel nearly $800 million in research grants. So Trump tried to cancel them. A court that's between Trump and the Supreme Court, right? A lower court tried to tie him up and say that you can't do that. Your executive branch can't stop the $800 million in research branch, even if they fall under your presidential authority. And the Supreme Court told that lower court, back off, you can't do that. So that's that. We're going to move on to the next one. We're going to remember, I'm going to machine gun these stories out. Here's Politico. Justice Department asked Supreme Court to allow Trump to withhold foreign aid. A Solicitor General argues that only Congress has the authority to challenge impoundment of federal money. The Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to allow the president to withhold billions of dollars in congressionally appropriated foreign aid before the fiscal year ends on September 30th. So Trump wants to cut off their payment. The Justice Department filed an emergency appeal with the High Court Tuesday, asking justices to pause a federal lower court district judge's order that requires the administration to come up with a plan to lay out the money by the deadline next month. A Solicitor General John Sauer argued in the new filing that groups representing aid contractors like USAID have no legal basis to force such spending, and it's up to Congress to challenge executive branch spending shortfalls under a 1974 law called the Impoundment Control Act. So just so you guys know, Congress controls the purse strings. They approved this amount of money going to these aid groups. And then Trump is saying, I'm cutting off that money, meaning Congress is allowed to approve the money, but does it force the president to spend it? That's what's at odds. And Trump says, I don't have an obligation to spend it. You guys can raise it. Doesn't mean it has to be spent. And then we can pull back the savings to Americans. That's what's before the Supreme Court. Here's Sauer. Congress did not upset the delicate interbranch balance by allowing for unlimited, unconstrained private lawsuits, Sauer wrote. Any lingering dispute about the proper disposition of funds that the president seeks to rescind shortly before they expire should be left to the political branches, not effectively prejudged by the district court. While Sauer's submission is framed as an argument to defer to Congress, he also makes clear that the administration believes Trump has authority to engage in so-called pocket rescissions that would occur so late in the fiscal year that it would be impractical for Congress to reverse them. So see, he's playing one over on Congress where they can't reverse him if he times it just right at the end of their session or right before the continued resolution that they have to vote on. It's the latest escalation in Trump's effort to wrest the power of the purse from the Congress. Not true. He's arresting the power to spend what the Congress raises in the purse, one that has alarmed lower courts and rankled even some Republicans in Congress. Trump and his budget architect, Russell Vought, who's a good guy, have long sought to challenge the 1974 laws. So this could go up to the Supreme Court. I hope it does. Next case, number 3. Donald Trump issues order defying Supreme Court precedent. Which Supreme Court precedent? A new executive order signed by President Donald Trump on Monday will allow for the prosecution of people involved in the burning of the American flag. This is in direct opposition to the precedent set by the Supreme Court in Texas versus Johnson case in 1989 that deemed the action an act of symbolic speech. Now, in 1989, they said you could burn a flag because it's speech. Trump said he was making it a federal crime to burn an American flag because it incites a riot. It activates people to be more violent, which I think you can make a very good case for in Washington, D.C. The reason why I always hated flag burning laws, this is just me personally, because this is going to go to the Supreme Court. They have to always be defining and making sure that we're staying true to the intent of the founders of the original constitutional document that protects free speech. Did free speech intend for you to be able to burn a flag, even if it incites a riot? Or for Trump to say peacefully protest as you make your way to the Capitol, even if it incites a riot? What is incitement? It's like when you cause a people to do something, you take on part of the blame. It's an incitement to violence. Is burning a flag such a thing? Or is going up in your face, like in public, talking about your wife and calling her a hoe or something like that? Is that not an incitement to violence? Where I'm from, it is. Well, this is my beef with the flag burning thing. Right now, if I was to take any flag, a trans flag, and burn it, or an environmental flag, or a Mexico flag, and I burned it on a sidewalk in Los Angeles, right now, I would get arrested. Why? Well, you can't just light a fire anywhere in California. So if I can light a flag on fire, can I set up a barbecue? Can I set up a fire pit right in the middle of Hollywood and Vine in LA, set up a big fire pit and just burn a fire? My friends and I can roast hot dogs. Maybe they'll say you can't do a barbecue. What if I make it free speech? What if it's my artistic intent? I'm doing an art installation. It's performance art. It's free speech, First Amendment. It's the arts. I'm going to set up a fire pit in the middle of Hollywood and Vine, block traffic, light a fire. And then what if I just take an American flag and put it in that fire instead? Now it's free speech. Now they go, hey, we'll fine you for carbon emissions if you start a fire on a sidewalk. But if you burn a flag on a sidewalk, it's free speech. You see how this works? It's two-tiered justice system. California will nail you for carbon emissions, or anyone will. But if you light an American flag, it's, hey, protect that carbon emission. Suddenly, I'm just saying, I don't think anyone should be able to burn anything in public just for the hell of it. It's not a proper form of protest. I don't believe the founders or the first Constitution was written to protect free speech. It did not intend to protect porn. And now people go like, oh, it's my art integrity. It's my free expression. Burning a flag is my free expression. Burning a cross on my lawn with the Klan said, that's our free expression. And they go, no, that's a threat. You put a cross next to someone's lawn, and you're threatening them. Next article. And I want to hear from you guys in the chat. What do you guys think? Tell me. I hope this is drumming up some ideas in your own head, some of your own opinions. Going to make you think. heaven forbid, here in exile. Next headline. This is MSNBC, so of course, enemy territory once again. Trump's attempt to fire a Federal Reserve governor tests a weird Supreme Court move. The High Court majority recently went out of its way to signal its intention to protect the Federal Reserve Board's independence. This is going to, remember this gal over at the Federal Reserve, Trump's firing the warning shot on Jerome Powell. And the Federal Reserve right now, no branch of our government can respond to them or act. There's no way that we can reform that unelected branch. Back in May, when a divided Supreme Court gave President Trump the power to fire members of certain labor boards without cause, the Republican-appointed majority went out of its way to signal its intention to protect the Federal Reserve Board, even though the Fed itself wasn't at issue in that case. Now, Trump's attempt to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook for, once again, she's a Democrat, for mortgage fraud. She has 2 residents. These are all rich people problems. I only have 1 house. Why are all these people running around with 2 houses? And they call both of their houses their primary residence to get a tax break on both. That's what Adam Schiff did, Letitia James did. It's a Democrat thing. But when Trump overestimates his own properties in Mar-a-Lago, which were not overestimated, we find out now they were greatly underestimated, he gets a $480 million fine. So Trump's trying to fire Lisa Cook at the Fed. In that May shadow docket case, Trump versus Wilcox, which involved members of the National Labor Relations Board and Merit Systems Protection Board, the majority addressed these board members' argument that the logic behind stripping their protections was also to imperil the Federal Reserve's independence. They know what Trump's trying to get at. Quote, "We disagree," the majority wrote, citing a previous precedent in noting that the Fed, quote, "is a uniquely structured, quasi-private entity that follows in the distinct historical tradition of the first and second banks of the United States, which the president can't traditionally touch." Dissenting in the Wilcox case, Justice Elena Kagan, who's wrong about everything, wrote for the Democrat appointees that she appreciated the majority's intention to avoid imperiling the Fed, but that its decision still posed a puzzle. That's because the Federal Reserve's independence rests on the same foundation as agencies such as the, whatever those letters are, which Kagan pointed out means it rests on a nearly century-old precedent. Hubert Humphrey's executor. The Trump administration wants to overturn that 1935 decision, and the majority's recent rulings on presidential power suggests it's on board with that effort. Trump could get another win. And here's our final article over at Newsweek, the Supreme Court to decide if ICE agents can arrest based on apparent ethnicity. Can you look at someone's ethnicity, which of course would break a whole lot of civil rights laws? This is the Democrats' main problem with just arresting and evicting Hispanics, let's say. If they look Hispanic and they're on a work site and they're speaking Spanish and they don't speak English, are you allowed to imply that they ought to be taken into custody and look at their work visa or at their citizenship based on those external qualities? Remember, Martin Luther King said that we want to judge people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. So are they in breach? Or racial or profiling? If you're looking for a terrorist, the reason why you and I at the TSA, when we go to an airport, we have to take our shoes off and they get scanned and they do a full body scan. You know, a 95-year-old white grandmother in a wheelchair, they have to scan her. It's because in America, they don't allow profiling. They don't allow you to say, you know what? I'm looking for a man in a turban, a guy who ritually shaved himself and is going around going, oh, la, 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 death to America. They're going, we can't look into him any more than we look into that white 95-year-old lady or that nun in a wheelchair. We have to look at them both because we don't do profiling. Israel, by the way, are experts at reading people. They do profiling, racial profiling, religious profiling, and they don't have to stop that 95-year-old lady in a wheelchair. The Trump administration asked the Supreme Court earlier this month to stay a federal judge's order that had limited immigration agents in LA area from stopping, questioning, and detaining people based on factors that include their apparent ethnicity, language, and place of work, like outside of a Home Depot when all the guys are out there going, trabajo, trabajo. I used to pick them up to do lawn work when I was in Burbank. Why it matters. The case could determine whether immigration agents can rely on factors including a person's apparent ethnicity or speaking Spanish as part of the reasonable suspicion standard that permits immigration stops. Now, immigration stop, that's not an arrest. It's no different, by the way, than opening up. You've had drunk driving stops where they go and they check everyone. Whether if you're swerving or not, they check you. They go, how you doing tonight, sir? And you're all, I'm doing fine. I didn't do anything, officer. Immigration enforcement has been a key focus of the Trump administration. On President Trump's first day in the second term, he signed 10 executive orders and proclamations related to immigration. During the administration's first 100 days, the Immigration and Customs of ICE reported that it arrested 66,000 undocumented migrants and removed 65,000 of them. That's a pretty good record where I'm from. Litigation began related to an incident in June when Pasadena residents Pedro Vasquez Perdomo, Carlos Alexandro Osorto, and Isaac Antonio Villegas Molina were arrested at a bus stop. During a federal enforcement operation, the three men and several other plaintiffs sued several federal officers, including Homeland Security Kristi Noem, Acting Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director Todd Lyons, and Attorney General Pam Bondi. I don't know if this is fair or not. You guys know how much I hate racism. You know how much I hate the idea that you're looking at someone's externals and you start prejudging them, including someone having a thick Spanish, they can't speak English, they're working at a Home Depot, and suddenly you accuse them of being an illegal. You speak English? Are you even a citizen? I just don't know if we should be projecting crimes onto people for their ethnicity, for their religion. You know, you'll see me make blanket statements against Muslims. I obviously don't mean that about all Muslims being terrorists. I will say they're all pagan and they're in the wrong religion, but I won't say that they're criminals. You can see how it's kind of a give some on one side and take it away from another. We have to find illegals. They're from other countries. Other countries tend to speak other languages. And if we weren't breach and lax in our Constitution that allowed them in the first place, we wouldn't have to do this ugly thing of profile them by their ethnicity, by their culture, by their workplace. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And I'm not looking for groupthink. I'm not looking for a consensus. I want each of you to be able to tell me exactly what you think, because that's all I'm doing to you. I'm brave enough to do it and broadcast it across the world. You can leave a little tiny comment of what you think. Do we profile by language or not? Shout out to the Quad Club. God bless you all. I'm Doug in Exile.